Hi, I'm Gwenydd Jones of the Translator Studio. We specialise in teaching the art of translation. In this video, I interview Emma Goldsmith, a freelance Spanish to English medical translator and chair of the Mediterranean Editors and Translators Association, MET. Emma talks about the benefits of being a member of MET, which is a community-centred association for translators, editors and other language professionals in and beyond Europe who work with English. She tells me about the member-created CPD opportunities available at MET and about the personal connections that members make at its yearly itinerant conference, METM. Translators, I give you Emma Goldsmith. Emma, we're here today to talk about the Mediterranean Editors and Translators Association, MET. But before we get into that, I'd really like to learn a little bit more about you. Could you tell us the story about how you became a translator?
Yeah, well, thanks for inviting me, Gwen. Yeah, my personal story is probably will be familiar to a lot of people who started about the same time as me. I'm talking about back in the 90s, because there's such a difference between people who started translating in the pre-internet era and post-internet era. So I moved out to Spain in the late 80s. I've been here for over 30 years now. And when I moved out, I spoke no Spanish at all, which meant that I didn't have the idea of working as a translator at all. My background originally is in nursing. I trained as a nurse in London. And so when I was living here, I was in total Spanish immersion. My husband is a Spanish speaker. He's a Chilean. Mm-hmm. And he speaks no English at all. So it was a very steep learning curve to begin with, but you soon acquire language like that, the best way possible, probably. So after a few years, my Spanish was fairly fluent. And I had a friend who just happened to say, she's a translator already. And she happened to say, there's a lot of work. There's a big need for native English translators in Madrid, because at that stage, without the internet, it's very local. The whole market is not globalized at that stage. People who've got offices there have needs of working, of producing English communications of various levels of different sorts of texts. And why don't you do this? It's a great job to have. And I fell into it like that, in the most informal way you could imagine. And I wouldn't recommend it for people who are beginning nowadays, because now it's completely different, as you know. So my background is very typical of people who've come from other careers and moved into translation, because I think there's got a clear difference between people who've started their studies in translation or in foreign languages and then have specialized. And then the other sort of area of people who come into translation are those who come from other backgrounds with another career, and they have to acquire the translation skills they haven't got. In my case, that was me. But our subject knowledge and our area of specialization is already, clearly written out for us. So that's a little bit about my how I started out in professional translation.
I was wondering, did you go directly into medical translation and just stay in that specialization?
I didn't at all. I started in very general work, very business type genres of letters and contracts and things that I was probably way out of my depth, and unaware, because I didn't have a support group. I hadn't started joining any associations. There were no online forums or anything like that. And so I had very little feedback, apart from the people I was working for. Those were translation agencies in Madrid. And those particular ones didn't work in medicine. And it was only sort of a few years later, by the early 2000s, that I that somebody gave me a medical text to work on, and I suddenly thought, well, this is my field. I feel comfortable working in this field. This is what I should be doing. And by then, of course, it was more globalized. We all had emails at least, and we were connecting with each other. And so translation agencies and direct clients were then had the world opened up to them to find really good translators for the jobs that they had. And that's when I started working in medical translation only. And I haven't looked back since then.
I'd never really thought about it before, but it does make sense that this specialization is something that has come more with the growth of the internet, because the more specialist you get, the more widely you need to cast your net for clients. And yeah, it makes perfect sense that in the 90s it'd just be like, you're around the corner, we've got an urgent text, which I suppose urgent has a different definition as well.
Yes, and of course it was going in by bus to pick up the translations, and then after a little while it was faxing. I received translations by fax, but I had to go in and deliver them after that. But yes, I think the specialization, it was the opening up of at a global level was beneficial to clients who had specific translation needs, and also to translators, because we were able to research areas that we were less familiar with and have been able to specialize and acquire that knowledge. People who haven't got university degrees in a certain subject can now learn a lot about a specific subject. Well, they can actually take online, distance degrees and so on. But then, of course, as you know, there are lots of other courses out there free. There's so much offer as CPD, free and paid, that you can specialize and get very good at your subject now.
Yes,
yeah.
It's interesting. There's just so many options now.
Yes, indeed.
Moving across to talk to you a little bit about MET, could you give us a brief history of the association and explain your role in MET?
Yes, well, MET, which stands for Mediterranean Editors and Translators, was founded in 2006 by a small group of English language specialists in the Barcelona area in Spain. There was a group of native English speakers who were providing language services to that local community. And they were mostly biomedical translators and editors working with hospital groups, with authors who were publishing in specialty journals, medical journals, and so on. And so they wanted to get together. They needed a forum where they could exchange their experiences. And that's how it was set up, with a very small group of people, and it has grown gradually. There's still a very strong base in Barcelona. Some of the founding members are still very active MET members, and they come to our conferences and help us and give us our training, and with their experience, it's wonderful to have that backing. But of course, over these years, MET has expanded, initially in the Mediterranean basin around Spain, across Spain. I live in Madrid. There's quite a number of us from Madrid now, from other Mediterranean countries, and also much further afield now. We have members in South Africa, in Peru, in Israel, all over the place.
And you're the chair of the association, and so you're up at the top, in the top slot.
Up at the top, which is quite interesting, because I only joined MET in 2013. I was already a member of several other translators associations, but I didn't feel, living in Spain, that I'd found a place. We talk about finding our tribe, finding people that we have a lot in common with. And one of the things that I didn't have in common with the other associations was that I wasn't living in that country, or I wasn't a native speaker of the language, or different things like that. And I'd had my eye on MET for several years before that. I saw they were doing conferences here and there and workshop days. And in 2013, I saw that they were organizing their annual conference, and I heard indirectly that a group of people in Madrid were going to share a car and drive over. That was in Poblet in Tarragona. And I was able to join them, which was the biggest step for me, because when you go in without knowing anybody to a conference, it's like huge. It seems, all these people know each other, and I'm the only person who doesn't know anybody. So having spent, I don't know how long it was, 6-8 hours in a car with 4 other people, I felt that, they were my friends by the time we arrived. And so it was really nice from that point of view. And so I spent a couple of years as an attendee. I was helping. It's so important to help with associations that you're a member of, because you engage with the association and you get so much more out of it. It's totally two-way situation. So I was doing smaller things, like I managed the Facebook group page for 1 year for the conference, and was the sponsorship coordinator another year. And I like techie things. And so then the chair of council at that time, she contacted me and said, would you be interested in joining council? In what role? And webmaster seemed to me to be a fun techie thing to do. And that's how I joined council, as webmaster. And then I moved into membership chair for a couple of years. And I was elected chair just over 2 years ago, because we've just had our General Assembly and we've got new council that started just a couple of weeks ago. And I'm going to complete another 2-year term as chair. Our roles on council are renewed every 2 years, but there are certain ones, according to our charter, where you can't actually be chair for more than 4 years.
Right.
It's written into our charter. It's a good way of making sure we get fresh blood and people don't stay on too long.
It's I think I could hear 2 morals in that story. The first thing was what you said at the beginning about it's difficult when you go into a conference. It can be difficult to make friends, and it reminds me of my mum when I was a little girl, first day of school, saying, just sit next to somebody and say hello. And it's almost like that when you go into these conferences, and it's just like, okay, I'm going to go up to someone and say hello. And so, this idea of car sharing to a conference is good for the environment and great for making friends. So I thought that's a really good tip. And the other, it's just interesting to think your progression, because you look at someone and you say, oh yes, well, chair of the Met and you're a well-established translator, but it's also shown how, you can get into this position. You start by volunteering, you become involved in a community, and you build your way up. And maybe for people starting out or looking at which association to join, I would think it's the same in all of the associations. This idea of getting involved and doing something is a great way to start, and then you don't quite know where it's going to lead.
Yes, we've got a very big helpers base. Membership, I've looked up the figures just today to see how many. We're almost at 500. We're more or less, we renew at the end of every year. So we lose some people and we gain more members, and at the moment we're fairly stable at about 500 members, having grown gradually over the last 10 years in particular. 5 years maybe. But out of those 500 members, 80 are volunteers, are helpers. They help in many different roles, and some are very small little roles, and others are quite time consuming, and they play a big part because we have no paid roles. No. We're all volunteers. And so everything that happens is done by a volunteer, and that makes it fun, because we're doing a lot of teamwork. And it means that we've all got each other's back all the time. There's nobody, you can't pass the buck and say, well, so and so that they're paid to do this. Nobody is. It's as simple as that. So if we know that somebody's very busy, or if they're unwell or whatever, we'll immediately come in and lessen their load, and vice versa. So we're all there for each other. So we have about 80 people who help in different ways. And of them, about half of them are active helpers at our conferences. And this changes from one year to another. It doesn't mean you help every year. You can drop in and drop out as you like. But yes, people who help are they know their helpers teams. They know the people that they're in contact with, communicating as the conference approaches. People who work at the conference in an active way. They are more visible, their profile is higher, and so it's actually easier to feel to get to know people, I think. Also, we have a system of people who are at a conference for the first time. We used to put a green sticker on their badge, and we've now stopped the stickers and we actually print it, little green first timer, so that people are extra specially friendly, because everybody's had been there for the first time, everybody's done a first time. And seeing that on somebody's badge means that you'll make a little bit of extra effort to make sure that they're feeling comfortable at their first conference with MET.
It's really nice to hear this. I feel what you said about when you join the I'm based in Spain as well, and it is true when you join perhaps the larger associations based in the UK, but they are quite UK centric, and you do that, they have their uses, and it's good to be a member for lots of reasons, but you don't really feel strongly part of a community. What you're describing there is a much stronger community, and I imagine a great place to network, to make work contacts.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We don't focus much on business skills in general. Of course, we have our training events that do, but in general, it's not a conference where everybody goes very smartly dressed, business card in hand, you know, and how many contacts have you made and so on, because this is happening all the time on the ground when you're there. We're very informal, we're very friendly, and very few business cards are exchanged, but serious networking happens all the time, from the social events through to the core program itself. People are networking all the time. In fact, one of the things we do at the conference is have our social program, which we call off METM, because it's not core METM, so we call it off METM. And those are anything from a walk that we do all together. At this last conference of the 150 attendees, 50 of us went on a walk on the morning at the end of the conference, which is great because you can fall into step with someone you actually haven't managed to speak to at the conference. And you can stay as long as you like on a walk. You can, you know, then merge with another group, and it's a very, very relaxed way of networking. And then we have meal groups a couple of times on the Thursday evening, on the Friday lunchtime, when people sign up in advance to join a table that are going to speak about a specific topic, which is loosely translation or editing. It's language related, but it can also be kind of off topic as well, and that's not a problem at all. And one person leads, so there's a helper that we need, somebody to actually lead the table, will guide the conversation, make sure everybody's included. And that's a very good way of getting to know people. You're actually sat down at a table of random people. You don't know who's going to be on the table until shortly before, a couple of days before. We provide a list of the names of people who are on your table. But when you sign up to because you're interested in a certain subject to talk about it, you don't know who else is going to be there apart from the leader. You know that who the leader is that day. So the tables are very popular ways of networking.
That's a fantastic idea, because it's setting it up for success, isn't it? You know, everyone's interested in the topic, so that's already agreed, and you've got a starting place to talk. That sounds like an excellent idea to me.
Yeah, I mean the conversation wanders. Sometimes people stay on topic, and sometimes they speak 5 minutes about that, and then they discover there's something else that's more interesting, more fun, or whatever to talk about.
And thinking about MET, something that I've always been a bit unsure about, because Mediterranean editor and translators, so is it only for editors and translators, first of all? And second of all, what exactly does Mediterranean translate into? Is it I know it's not a location, because you've already said you've got members from all over the world, but are we thinking in terms of Mediterranean languages?
We've never thought in terms of Mediterranean languages because our association is for people who work into English as translators or with English. So it could be out of English, and editors working in English. Obviously, if they're translators, their source or target language might be another one, and it might be Italian, French, Spanish, and so on. It might be a Mediterranean language, but not necessarily. I think that we're not just translators and editors. It worked well in our name, but in fact, we're language professionals with many different hats. Interpreters, writing coaches, language teachers, researchers, editors, copy editors, author editors, different types of editing that happen within the big umbrella of editing.
Yes.
So they're all sorts. Anybody who works with language professionally, who provide consultancy services in language, that's I think that's how you would describe our membership.
And of course, a lot of people diversify and offer more than one service.
Yes, indeed. Yes. It's quite hard to see when people join and they're asked to tick a box to say what are they, and some people like ticking one because they're very specialist and they only do one sort of editing or something, and other people tick lots and lots. And it's quite interesting to see the spread of professions that we do have. Yeah.
And so if anyone is listening to us and they're thinking, I want to join, what does the membership include and how much does it cost?
Well, not a lot.
It includes not a lot or costs not a lot?
It costs not a lot. Good point. Yes, annual membership fee is €38. And for students who are in full-time education and for over 65-year-olds, it's 19, it's half the price, €19. So it is a very reasonable annual fee that we charge. Because we're all volunteers, our overheads are not as high as other associations are. We don't have any offices anywhere. We don't have a physical location. So we don't have any expenses at that level either. And generally our conferences are made so that we don't want to make a profit. We're a non-profit association, and we don't want to make a loss either because we need to be financially stable. But so we try and balance out the ticket to the conference in such a way that we will cover those expenses. So in fact, a membership fee of €38 won't cover the conference, and it's a kind of separate item in our budgeting every year. That said, what do you get for your €38? Well, the most important thing at the moment seems to be that you can actually get a ticket to a conference. So our conferences, we call them METMs, and the extra M that comes on the end of MET is meeting. So originally we talked about MET meetings, and that sort of shortened and it became METMs. And then we just put the year on the end. So we've just had METM 22, and next year will be METM 23. So one of the biggest benefits of being a member is that you have quite a good chance of getting a ticket to a METM because they are increasingly popular. We don't like to scare people or think that they need to join because otherwise they won't get a ticket. But the fact of the matter is that this year we sold out in a few days, and we give members a week of member-only registration because it's a benefit of being a member. And we weren't actually we had to close registration before the week was up. So non-members didn't actually get a look in except through the waiting list. We open up a waiting list, and because people have signed up in quite a rush, we do get some cancellations coming in. And by that time in the waiting list, there might be members and non-members.
Sounds like you need a bigger venue.
Well, of course, that is something we look at. Let's make it bigger. Because some members don't actually necessarily get in. And that is disappointing. We do want members to be able to go to our conference if they want to, if it's within travel distance for them and it's a time of year that they can go and so on. And so we have looked at making METMs bigger. And pre-pandemic, we actually went up to 175. We increased by 25 because that was something that we at our general assemblies, we have quite a long time for open discussion. And that's when people say, how they are able to influence the decisions that council make during the year. That's one of the ways at our General Assembly. And people were saying, open it up, let's have 300 instead of 150 people. But that changes the whole feeling of a METM.
Okay.
A METM with 150 people is a size that doesn't seem massive. When we're all having lunch together and it's a buffet and it's all quite noisy, yes, you think there are well over 100, 150. We don't want any more than that. But to be able to network with those people, to be able to make meaningful contacts, to have a chance of meeting the same person one day and the next, which is sometimes important to follow up on something, and you can bump into them at breakfast or at a talk or at a meal. That sort of networking is really important. And we don't feel that we can go much above 150, 175 to maintain that level of that size, really.
I see. And talking about I know that it isn't the only membership benefit. What are the other benefits of being a member?
Yes, I got a bit distracted talking about METMs. We've only came back from METM a couple of weeks ago, so it's all in my mind.
Fresh
yes,
in your mind. Yeah.
We do other things. Of course, we do. We have a workshop season. So workshops are usually they have a 3-hour format, and they're small interactive formats with usually a maximum of 20 people, facilitated by a MET member almost always. And again, this is the idea of our association as a peer sharing, peer-to-peer training association. We don't pay trainers to come in. Under very exceptional circumstances we might do, but generally they're MET members who are sharing their knowledge with other members. So the workshop season is usually sort of February through to June, sometimes in September. We pilot workshops in that period, and then we repeat them at the METM that year. And of course, this has changed considerably since the pandemic, because until then, it was all entirely in-person, on-the-ground events. And through the needs of what transpired through the pandemic, we had to move online. It was a big challenge for us and for everybody, of course. And so we've moved workshops online, and probably next year we're going to be going back to in-person ones as well. And
so you'll do a combination of both options.
Yes, different workshops, different circumstances. Some workshops don't lend themselves to an online format very well when you get into small groups to discuss a text that you're working on. The workshops might be on grammar, on punctuation, on subject specific skills, certain editing skills, say editing of non-native English texts. And so some of those don't lend themselves to an online situation. Of course, we use Zoom, we use breakout rooms, so we can do that by getting people into smaller rooms and talking about it. But it's not quite the same as being there and seeing everybody working together.
It's always the kind of the trade-off, isn't it? I'd prefer to be in person. It's nicer, even if it's just means, going and having a coffee with someone in the break.
Yes.
At the same time, the advantage of being able to be anywhere in the world and train anywhere in the world, and just the difficulties and the cost of traveling, it opens up so many possibilities as well. I suppose it's looking for the best of both situations, because both bring their advantages.
Yes, absolutely. Our membership is no longer limited to Barcelona or to Spain. It is spread across Europe. In fact, after Spain, members based in Spain account for about a third of our membership at the moment. But after that, the UK is about the second
Okay, that's
country
interesting.
where most members are. I think there might be 20% or something like that. And then we have members in Italy, a big member base in Italy, in Netherlands, in France as well, but also in Portugal, in the United States, and other areas further in Eastern Europe. And so, of course, those people who live much further afield do benefit from our online training offer.
I mean, I
So,
really, when you think it's only 38 euros, it's it's not a very big outlay. And then you've got the discount as well for students and for over 65s. Because as a member, another thing that I appreciate, for instance, is you can use the Met logo on your marketing, and so it's good. It's a way to show you're a member of an association, and
yes.
your newsletters as well. There are lots of different things, different information on the website.
Yeah. The workshops are, we usually charge a small amount for attending those. And then we have a series of online events, which are more informal CPD, which we have brought in since the pandemic. We have welcome chats for new members, which is a good way for new members to meet each other and a few key stalwart members who've been there for several years to guide the discussion. So those are nice little groups to get to know a few new people when you join. And then we have Met Conversations, which is an online discussion, usually about once a month, on a certain language-related topic. We started them during the pandemic, so they were slightly more light-hearted in their nature, and they've gradually evolved over these 2 or 3 years to be maybe more not serious. Some of the topics are quite academic, and some of them are to do with how to stay mentally healthy when you're working, how to juggle a life-work balance, and so on. Things that people really like, need to learn about. A lot of our members are freelance translators and editors. So having all that wonderful flexibility does mean that you can work from sunrise to sunset, and that's not good for us. So it's good for people to meet other people who are in the same situation. And we have we've now got to a stage that this event has been maturing over these years. We have people to lead a discussion. They're the kind of springboard people who just give a 5-minute introduction to the topic, Met members. Sometimes they're people who haven't spoken at a conference before, so it's a good way of just having 5 minutes of the microphone and see how it feels.
All eyes on you.
Yes, exactly. And it raises your profile because, we might have 40 people at a Met conversation. And so all eyes are on you, but you're sharing your experience. It might be from people with less experience coming in, what are the strategies that they've worked out, or it might be somebody more experienced. And then we break out into smaller groups, quite small groups, 4 or 5 people, and we talk about this for 20 minutes, and then we come back into the main room and we have another reshuffle. And that's a very nice way of networking with people. That little group of 4 or 5 people talking about a specific topic is really nice. And then we crowdsource a review of what we've been talking about. So people who haven't actually been able to attend, because we don't record these, they're just for people who are actually there. You don't have to sign up. They're not. You don't have to buy a ticket. You just, if you're available and interested, you just click the link that day, and then we drop down notes in a shared Google Doc. And then we have an online resource called the Hive, which is for members only. And it's a hub where we share resources that are useful for us as translators and editors. So we talk about tools that we use. And we write up a review. The Hive team, there's a little team, again, another helpers team we have there, headed by a queen bee, we call her, because of the Hive name. So we have a Hive team of editors, and that's a really good way for people to work on their writing skills and to be edited by the same team. and they build up a review and they draft the account of what has been talked about at that MET conversation. So all members can go in and read up on that.
Okay,
we have
Sorry,
we have a similar.
All of this is inside the members area on the
That's
site.
right. Yes. And that's nice. And we do something similar for METM presentations. We call them the chronicles. And ahead of the presentation, you pick a talk that you'd like to review. And it's a very good way of showing off your writing skills. This is what I write, and then it's edited by the Hive team. And so you give the content and the substance of the talk to all members who haven't been able to attend. So the chronicles are quite popular on the Hive as well.
It's really interesting listening to you, because the next question I was going to ask you was what makes MET special, but actually I feel like you've already answered it, or at least my conclusion from listening to you is community, to sum it up in one word.
I think it is. I think it's finding your tribe, feeling that you're on the same wavelength as somebody else. A lot of us are multilingual, either because we were born into a multilingual family, or we've acquired another language during our as children, or as part of our working life. And multilingual people, you can identify with others in a way that is very hard to explain to somebody who has one language only. Of course, we have editors who are monolinguals, and so it's very good for other people to it's a very good exchange that we can have there as well. But yes, it's I think the strength of MET is the small networking that we do, getting to know other members really quite well. And then it becomes a source of recommendations. You know how somebody works, you see their writing. So when a client approaches you for a translation or for a text for editing that you can't take because it's not in your field, because you don't have time or for whatever reason, you then have a network of people that you can recommend. And so there's a lot of word of mouth recommendations. We also have an online directory. So everybody who belongs to MET has a profile there. They can choose to make it public, so it's findable by everybody, by potential clients. So we have the directory, and you can search by speciality, by language, by country where people live, and so on. So that's a very valuable resource, I think.
And so if someone has listened to this now and is raring to join, what do they need to do?
Well, go to our website, which is metmeetings.org, and click the tab that says Join MET.
And that's it. You can sign up. Are there any requirements you have to meet?
We don't have. You have to be 21 years old and over. So it's so when we say we have a special rate for students, we're talking about master's students onwards. But otherwise, we don't say you need to have worked in translating or editing for minimum of 5 years, or we don't ask for a CPD record. Our association is all about CPD. It's about training. It's about improving our skills in every way. We're not. We don't control how much people do. That depends where you are in your career and what your needs are, of course. So we're informal from that point of view. We're not chartered. We don't give points for CPD. We give people certificates of attendance when they've attended a METM or a workshop. If they belong to other associations, it's important for them to keep a record, probably. But no, our requirements are just being over the age of 21.
And interested and ready to join.
Exactly. And help, hopefully.
And hopefully join and help. I'll put a link in the show notes to the website. So for anyone who's interested, they can look down in the notes and click over to you.
That's
Before
great.
we finish, I would like to ask you a question that I ask everybody that I interview, which is whether you have a message for early career translators.
Well, people who are starting out now in translation, or in editing, they're in a different position from me. So my story of how I began, which we mentioned earlier, doesn't apply. The competition is fierce now. You have to have excellent skills in different areas. So my advice is that you make sure that you're at the top of your game in your source language, that you've worked hard at it. Some people will be living in their source language country, so they will have that advantage. Other people now have access to all sorts of source language resources. Of course, that's easier, but read in your source language, read in your target language, become a good writer of your target language. People who leave school and are native English speakers, some people presume that they're good writers. Most of us are not good writers when we leave school, and it's a skill that can be learned. And it's something that you can learn through reading a lot, through writing a lot, and getting feedback and hearing about how you're getting on. Getting feedback is a really important thing when you're starting out and when you're in the mid-career and ending your career. You need to hear how you're doing, and get feedback and learn how you can improve. Getting feedback is really important, I think.
Well, that's some excellent advice. Thank you very much, Emma, and thank you for coming to speak to us. It's been a very interesting interview.
Thanks very much, Gwen. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. I hope you enjoyed this interview from the Translators Studio. We specialise in teaching the art of translation and in preparing translators for certification through the Diptrans exam. If you like our content, please let us know by clicking on the subscribe button. See you in the next video.